conversation about issues that are taking place in Eldridge. And on behalf of Ryan and I, we had no idea if it was going to be me and him and Jeff or 5 people. We maybe have 15, so that's probably pretty good. As a way of introduction, Ryan and I are the newest members of the City Council, having been sworn in last January, and we're finishing up what I would say we would agree has been a pretty eventful first year, where we've learned a lot and have a lot more to learn. That's probably the biggest thing too. As far as Ryan and I are concerned, we probably couldn't be any more different. I mean, he's the youngest guy in the council. I'm the oldest. He's bald. I'm not. He could probably lift a horse. I definitely cannot do that. So anyway, but for whatever differences we have, the one thing that I've learned over the last 12 months is that we both share a desire to serve our community. We both have a passion to make Eldridge better. And most importantly, we are firm believers in transparency, where we believe that you need to know what we know. You know, and we want people to understand that. And I think that's been our thing in our 12 months. But also, even though we have differences, we don't always agree. We don't always vote the same way. But the one thing is true is that we can always have open and honest conversations, no matter what the issue is. And that's kind of what tonight is about, is an open and honest conversation. We hope you guys have some things you want to talk about. We have a few ground rules. Number one, please don't throw anything from the back row. We appreciate that.
What are you looking at me?
We want you to ask whatever question or make whatever comment you want, whether it's positive or negative, about anything concerning the city. And the most important thing is we're just really here to listen. Also tonight we have Nevada Lemke, who is a city administrator, in case some of you haven't met her. And then Jeff Martins is the assistant city administrator. And speaking for myself, and I think that Ryan would probably agree, all the things that the council and the city have gone through in the past year, we're really fortunate to have Nevada and Jeff leading the city staff, because they provide a wealth of knowledge and have to make some really difficult decisions, and so we're thankful for that. So before we open it up to your questions, we're going to ask Jeff and Nevada to just talk about a couple of things that are going on in the city that you might want to know about, and they might be talking points for later in the evening. But then we'll start with Jeff, if you want to take it over from there, Jeff.
Sure. My salary is paid out of community development, and so I'm the liaison between Planning and Zoning Board of Adjustment and the City Council. And so all the plans and applications that come through the city, I review along with city staff before it makes it to those boards, and then finally makes it to the council after that. But one thing we've been taking a look at a lot is in the southwest area of Eldridge, we have a large undeveloped area that's future use industrial development. And that blue line kind of encircles that area. There's a little bit over 1,000 acres in that area. We do not have any infrastructure or services west of Buttermilk Road right now. So there's no water or sewer over there. Anything west of Buttermilk, we need some lift stations on. So that's all stuff that we're looking at right now. I know Nevada's working with the utility department right now and a company called ISG doing a water study for the entire city. That's going to shed some light on what we need to do down in this area to make it more marketable, or to at least be able to answer developers' questions when they come and want to know how long is it going to take or how much is it going to cost to get water and sewer to this area. I think you all know that there's a supposed Meta data center that's going to Northwest Davenport, right across the street from that southwest corner of Eldridge, and they're kind of filling up down there. So the next logical step would be to try to bring some of that business across the road. So that's what I've been spending a lot of time taking a look at and talking with developers and city staff about. We are going to hopefully be working with Shy Hattery to take a look at some sewer numbers and to review some of the past work that they've done. I know the residents of Eldridge have benefited from a low tax rate for many, many years, and where that leaves us is kind of a break even on residential development. So I know everybody sees all these houses being built, and they think that Eldridge is making a lot of money on property tax from all those residential houses. And that's not necessarily the case because we provide a lot of services. Those services cost money. And residential development for us is more of a break even or just a little bit of a gain. We really need to get some of this commercial area developed and industrial areas to really get the tax gains that we want to be able to have the money to provide additional amenities that we'd like to provide. If we go to the next slide, I know this is hard to read. Basically, in 2023, the Quad City Chamber of Commerce that's now remarketing themselves to grow Quad Cities, worked with Hickey Global, and they were a national site selector service. They surveyed all the sites in the region, in the entire Quad City region. The QUIA property, which I can show you on a map here in a minute, is an Eldridge property that's scored at the top of the list. We also have an Avery property about halfway down the list. That's in our Northwest Development Park. So Eldridge had 2 sites out of the 100 or so sites that were surveying the Quad Cities on this top list and the #1 site. So this was a general model, and they also did it without putting the labor factor into it. And QUIA was still at the top, and Avery was also on that list. So just kind of cool to know that people are looking at Eldridge outside of Eldridge. This is a map that shows you the current zoning in that area. Up here you've got Lincoln Road. I'm sorry, I can't see that. Let me see if I can get over. There we go. So this would be a Grunwald development on Lincoln Road, and this would be First Street coming through. So this would be the green area is municipal, so that would be the school district's technology center that's being built there in our electric substation. So on the map you saw before, starting at this tier, this would all be future use light industrial, and then you get down into general industrial and the rest of it. We are looking at possibly working with Revolve Farms to annex 4 parcels down here in the southwest corner. Since Davenport is now a parcel ahead of us, we'd like to kind of keep pace so that they don't decide to go north. So we've had some of those discussions, and we're in the works with that. What you see here in the purple has already had the zoning switch to industrial. Everything else in the yellow is suburban agriculture. But that's really all I've got for you, and just a little bit about kind of what I do behind the scenes that you might not hear much about.
Some of the things that we talk about, that we'll be talking about is, back when I came to town 4 years ago, Eldridge was 3,000 people, and now it's more than double that. And it used to be this community surrounded by cornfields, and we loved being out here in our own little area, but now that's no longer the case. And so we're going to have, all that suburban agricultural land, that's going to have to be decided what's going to happen with that, and decisions are going to have to be made. Those conversations are going to be had in the future. Any questions of Jeff?
So the point of that is, so for that property to develop for that, we as a city, we have to put the infrastructure in before we can market it, or?
Possibly. It depends on the developer. The data centers that are coming, and I'm not saying we necessarily want one, but if a data center came, they're coming from the east and west coast, and our prices of development are much cheaper than what they're used to. In other communities like Des Moines, they're seeing those companies pay for all the infrastructure. Some of them don't even fill out TIF forms or urban renewal area forms to get reimbursed for it. What I think and I won't speak for the whole council, I'll speak for myself and say that what I see TIF as, tax increment financing, is a vehicle to pay somebody back for an investment is what I think is what it should be used for. So if somebody's coming in and putting in a lot of sewer and roads, let's say somebody had to redevelop Buttermilk Road for trucking so that they could build a warehouse on there, then I see and would recommend that TIF be used to pay them back for that infrastructure that they put in. So that's a vehicle that we would have that we could use if there was a developer that came in that had the money to front those costs. But when you start getting into lift stations, you're talking, $1 million, maybe sometimes more than $1 million. So you need either a bigger developer to do it, or the city may need to kick in if a small developer came and we had to put in the lift station, because we wouldn't want to put in a lift station big enough to serve the entire area, maybe not just the one guy that's coming there first. So there may be some decisions like that. But, we'll have to talk to the council about moving forward as that area gets interested and developed. I field several calls a week from people interested in those areas and ask some questions about it.
And obviously, the more shovel-ready those sites are, the more excited they are to come in if they have a quicker time frame of getting in there and getting construction built. So if there is a cost to the city, again, we kind of look at that as being offset by bringing an increased tax base, and that will help us fix the roads and not depend on the residential taxes to do that.
Any other questions for Jeff? All right, Matt.
All right, thanks, Scott. So another large part of what Jeff and I do, and probably the main goal for our job, is to work with the policymakers, our elected officials, council members, and board members to develop strategic goals for the community. And when they develop policies and create policies, we implement those at a community and staff level. So we have several large projects right now that we're working on that the council has taken steps to move forward. Most of these are just going to be updates that have already been in the city council meetings that they have taken action on. And they're also items that are going to continue to come up on future agendas because there's future action to be taken. LeClaire Road is one of the major projects we have right now. The council approved a study to do the entire LeClaire corridor to determine what improvement projects needed to be done to meet the future growth and the traffic needs for the community. So far, they've taken action to approve a traffic intersection signal at 4th and LeClaire. So that was approved a few months ago, and it's going to be on the 1st January agenda for the city council meeting for the design for that project to move forward and get ready to go out to bid so that construction can happen in the summer of 2025. Shai Hattery is our city engineer. They're going to be holding a public open house for the LeClaire Road corridor study to talk about some of the results of that study, some of the different potential improvement projects that could happen, and just to gather community input and feedback on that study and those results. We don't have a date yet for that, but that will be coming soon. Probably in January, we'll get a schedule for what the engineer is thinking to schedule that public open house. We'll be taking a phased approach to the different sections of LeClaire Road to do those improvement projects. And one of our next steps will be coordinating with the bi-state and Iowa DOT to determine the funding for those improvement projects and possible collaboration with the Iowa DOT for the section of LeClaire Road that joins the on and off ramps for Highway 61. We also have the South First Street project. Right now we have a TEEP study, which is a study that looks at the traffic enhancement and safety of the South First Street, looking at where we can put in crossings that are safe for pedestrians and how to connect the multi-use pathways and pedestrian walkways on both sides of South First. The report from that TEEP study is estimated to be done the first week of January 2025. So you'll see that come forward in the city council meetings for further discussion and action as well. And we have the milling and overlay project for South First Street, which is going to be from LeClaire Road south all the way to just north of Slopertown Road. That's going to be a milling and overlay project with a cold in place asphalt mix on top. And it will include paving those shoulders as well. The plans and specs for that project will also be on the first council agenda in January, with construction to begin in the summer of 2025 as well. If you aren't familiar with where the city council agendas are located, those are on our website and get posted outside of City Hall at least 24 hours ahead of every single city council meeting. The same is true for any board meetings that we have, the community center, the utility board, plan and zone. Those agendas are always going to be posted on the website and at City Hall. We've also got Lincoln Road. We've taken some steps to start planning a project that will be at least a few years out. But the first step of that process is to look at Lincoln Road and get it recategorized with the Iowa DOT to become at least a collector classification or above, so that we can look at getting federal or state funding. We're in the process of that right now. The DOT is reviewing that. We'll get a response back on that within the next 1 to 3 months, just depending on how many reclassifications they have to review. Once that road gets reclassified, we will then need to get that project on the MPO planning guide, which is our metropolitan planning organization. It's run through by state, and it covers all of the large and small cities in the region on both sides of the river. And they are the ones that collect and distribute and program the federal and state funded grants that you can apply for infrastructure, park projects, any of those large grant funded projects. Once we get Lincoln Road on the MPO plan, we can then start putting together different improvement projects and applying for funding and programming those to a fiscal year. So we are probably looking at least 5 years out to do a full reconstruction of Lincoln Road that would include sidewalks or pedestrian paths and whatever else the study would be able to show us that we're going to need for development and traffic in that area.
Any questions for Nevada on that? The Lincoln Road thing is probably one of the frustrations for Ryan and I, when we got on the council, what we learned the most is that city government just moves at an incredibly slow pace. You know, we had people from Rustic Ridge come and talk to us about they needed a rec trail and a bike path from their neighborhood, and we thought, okay, we can fix that. As you just heard, it's a long process to get to that point. And so that's probably one of the biggest things that we've learned in our year here is just how slow city government is.
As much as you try, as hard as you push it, it only moves so fast. So let me take a minute real quick and piggyback on Scott's intro. Kind of want to give you guys a little history of why or how I got here. And basically started 4 or 5 years ago. I started going to meetings here and there, but I found myself getting frustrated. I didn't know what was going on within the city. I didn't know why they were making decisions they were making. I didn't have the answers, but I also wasn't looking for the answers. So that's why I started going to meetings, and I kind of decided that if I didn't get involved, if I didn't start participating, I really didn't have anybody to be upset at but myself. So I started going to regular meetings, and actually I enjoyed it. I didn't always enjoy everything I saw, and I look back now, and I have a greater deal of respect for everybody involved, because what we're doing is not always easy. There's always somebody that you make happy, and there's somebody that you don't make happy. There's tough decisions, there's a handful of easy decisions, but at the end of the day, it's like another job. And one day I was asked by a couple of different people, "Are you going to run for city council?" And I said, no. And that probably went on for about a year. And finally I asked myself, when is the right time? If I don't put in my time now, if I don't share some of my experiences with my background, if I don't bring something to the table, who else is going to do it? And so that's why I decided to do it. So the biggest takeaway, Scott mentioned we're the opposites in many ways, but one thing we're not the opposite, and that's respecting each other and having that mutual conversation. There's things I learned from Scott, and I would say there's probably things that he's learned from me, and that's the benefit of people from all those backgrounds coming together is sharing their experiences of life, and then that's educating each other. And if people can't have those civil conversations, it's hard to learn. You just put up a fence. So I think with the council, we've got, again, looking back previous years, things that frustrated me, I got a little bit different respect for them now because I understand everything is a process. But at the end of the day, as long as you treat each other with respect, as long as you listen, that's the important thing that you can do. Then you can give back. Again, we're not always going to agree, but having that open conversation and sharing our ideas is probably the biggest thing that we can do for each other. So.
with that, I think that's kind of what we had to say, and we'd love to have any questions or comments from any of you that you might want to talk about or inquire about.
And keep it informal, really, because that was our whole goal here, is I know that, and I don't like getting up and speaking in front of the public, I'll be honest about that, but we wanted to make people comfortable. I know going to council meetings, I didn't even want the microphones here, we just were worried that there might be people that couldn't hear or something, but very much kitchen table talk here, okay? So there are no rules other than Scott said, don't throw things at me, you can throw them at him.
Judy?
This has been an ongoing thing with me is, does somebody at the city update the website? And have they looked at making it more user-friendly? Because I think it's very difficult to use.
Jeff?
Is something specific? Is there certain information you're looking for that you can't find, first of all?
I can never find the free yard waste pickup dates.
Okay.
That's one thing. I also went on, looked at, when I was looking for that, I thought, well, maybe it's in the newest newsletter. The newest newsletter that was pinned to it, I could find the one that came up that said, read our newest one was from 2022.
Yeah, and I just found out that that one was there, so I think I did update that. But I had been putting in the city documents section. I think it's to answer your question, I guess, it's been talked about, but again, it's who's the person to do that when you're already at a staff that's overwhelmed, and we've got 4 or 5 different people, you know, they're posting things on the website, you know, are responsible for this part or that part, and, you know, I try to get my own meeting stuff up there. Nevada tries to get the city council stuff up there. Well, then who has to put the park board and the utility board and the community center stuff up? And it's just finding, I mean, we don't have a full-time person that just does marketing or that would fit their category of job description. So I try to take on as much of it as I can, but I'm working with a format, you know, a template that was already created, you know, years ago, and there's only so much you can do with it. Does it need to be revamped? Probably. And I know Campbell-Iossi, that was one of the first things he said to me after he got on the city council, so he's right there with you.
I think I started hounding him before I got on, because I was very frustrated with navigating through it. Again, to reiterate what he said, though, I understand how thin they are in some areas. Ideally, I think sooner than later, that whole website needs to be redone. It needs to become user-friendly. We just talked about trying to obtain email addresses and that going forward in the future, because there's so much more we could do if we just had that set up properly.
Is it maybe more user-friendly on a computer versus my phone?
No,
Okay.
I don't think it is. I think it's antiquated.
On the phone, when I do it and I do the drop down, I'm like, well, where? Oh,
You
I
gotta
gotta
change it,
scroll to
yeah.
find where the drop down opened up.
No.
I still struggle getting to some of the sites. I can get to the agendas and anything saved, but I still struggle sometimes getting to the right calendar. It's just, again, now looking from the inside, I see that we're just stretched too thin. We're pulling and pulling, and we just need to fix the problem.
She brought up part of what I was gonna bring up. And this is just jobs I think the council needs now and not in the future. We always seem to be playing behind the curveball all of the time. And an IT person is on the top of my list. I think we need a grant writer. I think we need a director of parks and recreation. I feel we need an HR person. I don't know what the utility debt is with bad debts, but we could use somebody to make collections on there. And all these don't have to be full-time jobs. We also need somebody in communications, whether it's Nevada or a sidekick or whatever. But these departments are going every way they want to. You don't have 80% of your people inside fences at all. They're all doing their own thing. There's no guidelines whatsoever that I see. And that's frustrating.
Guidelines for what, sir?
Just operating.
Yeah, just operations. You guys always bring up the fact that, oh, Brian Dockery's a good one. He says he doesn't mind having the people have credit cards or a chance at having the money to go buy things. Now, I come from a whole different environment than that. And we use purchase order numbers. You know, everything was done by department. Each person used their personnel number. You signed that, and that's how it flew. And that's how it got paid. Because if it didn't get paid, you were the one that had to go back and do all the research. It wasn't the person in the office. You were losing hours other different places. And that's just, your debt collector, I don't know what your debts are for your utilities. But I thought I
That just
heard.
got turned over to that collection company, didn't it?
They are discussing.
They're discussing it.
Yep, they have not voted and approved, but they are looking at different service providers that can handle those third-party collections.
I thought I had heard on one of the meetings that they ran into somebody offering 25% of the take. That's
That-
pretty cheap.
That was, yeah, I think
That's
that was
pretty
one of the
cheap.
providers they were.
That was one of them. I think the other one was 40%.
That's kind of high.
That's a normal loan for you.
Yeah.
But at this point, what they're finding out is nobody was doing it all. They were sending the postcards every so many months, and that was all that was being done. And occasionally picking up the phone, but again, there was nobody there wasn't a set system in place.
You know, some landlords collect a month's rent up front and also a month's rent at the end, at the very beginning. Isn't there some way? Don't they charge for meters here in Elbridge? Or they used to?
They do, there's a deposit.
Can't they double that automatically and not half? Not, if it's $90 for the deposit, make it 180. And if they walk out of town without paying any of their bills, so sorry. That should revert to that debt. And that should be said to the people as they reside here, as they come in.
And that would be a utility board
You bet.
vote initially, and I know they're working on some changes. Going back to the first thing you said about the extra positions, IT and that, we've kind of had that conversation. And again, there's always seems to be something going on, so that's where one of the comments I made was let's hire where we're going, not where we're at. Because if you hire where you're at, like you said, it's too late. But you know, we've talked about doing some more time studies because there's multiple people doing multiple roles, and it's hard to keep pulling. So again, in theory, we need more staff. I agree with you on that.
But when you say time studies to me, and I know your government, that is just kicking the can down the road. Just go ahead and hire somebody. If they don't work out, then hire somebody else. And have the knowledge behind getting rid of them that you can legally do that.
Sure. When I say time study, I'm talking, so right now, we've got people in the office that work for both the city and utility. They're doing dual roles. They're sharing responsibilities. For us to know exactly, are they truly spending 50% of their time working on city business and 50% of their time working on utility? If they're spending 75% working on utility, then we can justify that position to the taxpayers, because we can't just, again, that's where we go back to the process, and we can justify it then. If that person's spending more money on utility, then we can offset that through the city side. Does that make sense?
But if you are specifically having people work for utilities, public works, water, then just hire them as such. Don't spread them amongst the three.
Sure.
I think the other thing to take into consideration, Jen, we've covered this, is Nevada's been here, what, a year and a half now, maybe?
Yep.
And Jeff's been here couple of years,
Just two.
you know, and they are discovering a lot of these inefficiencies that you've dealt, that you.
I'm not blaming these guys
No,
at
I'm
all.
not, they're not, I know, but
I'm
I'm
not
just saying,
blaming
they are,
anybody.
they are doing
I'm-
some of that
I
work
just-
behind the scenes.
I see a company run differently than I see a municipality run.
What I'm saying is, I think they see some of the same things that you see.
I mean, I'd be frustrated myself if I
And
was.
just in the past year, and we can talk about this, I mean, the whole utility board saga that we had to go through like for 6 or 7 months. I mean, we spent over $60,000 or $70,000 on legal fees to fight amongst ourselves.
Oh, that's
But
another
during that,
question.
but that does not even include all the time that Nevada and Jeff had to spend doing all the investigation. And they probably put 30 or 40 hours a weekend on the investigation on top of their regular jobs. And so some things slide through the cracks.
Scott, if somebody else has questions, go ahead. I've got a ton of them.
I can give you.
You know,
things.
excuse me, I'm retired, so I've got nothing else to think about.
I will say that it's just, in
Do you have
terms
a
of,
background in HR? Looking for a part-time person. I'm serious, no.
maybe just in terms of your park director position, you know, Jeff Ashcraft is the park board chairman, and the four of us had in meetings over the last month, and that has been kind of a semi-conversation as we look forward to what the park's needs are and everything. We used to have a full-time park person, you know, and it just wasn't in, and that was when we had the fitness center. But then when the fitness center was, when the Y came, there just isn't enough for the person to do full-time in their time.
You guys aren't thinking in the right way. You got the parks, and you got the community center. You got a partial person at the community center who's young, inexperienced. Do they know how to throw parties? Where if you get somebody with a park board, if you just read that Bettendorf Park kid getting hired, my God, he's got all kinds of ideas coming off the wall. And it's just, you know, if you want to make the center run, let's get a bit some money. If you don't, okay then. We've lost that battle. But let's learn from it too.
And those are discussions, as you read in the paper last week, that we'll be having over the course of the next 12 to 18 months on what that's going to look like.
My next question, unless there's other.
There is one back there.
Oh, good.
Hang on 1 second, sir. Go ahead, Kathy.
I just wanted to ask, I should know this because I do read the paper, but I've kind of gotten lost in the weeds. You talked about the traffic light, and is that, and then you talked about something coming on the agenda in January. So is the traffic light a done deal, or is there still an opportunity for a roundabout?
That's pretty much a done deal. I think council voted for that, you know, back in.
And that was actually council previous to us had that, set that money aside and had that set aside there. That's where what you're seeing now is obviously from the time that they voted that in, the cost went up a little bit. And then the other arterial stuff, I think, is what we're voting on basically now. So the design features of it.
Okay, I just wondered what that was about. Thank you.
Any other questions? Dave?
I'll slip one in real quick. So my background is I worked for the federal government. I was an auditor. And so a few months ago, I was just reading through, and what jumped out at me was repeat audit findings and material weaknesses. So, like I've talked to Scott a little bit, that's a showstopper where I come from. So I'm just wondering, you know, are we tracking it? Are we working on it? Do we don't care? I mean that's harsher than I mean it to be. But like when I saw, and I talked to Jeff before, so their audit findings from Sands to the auditor, but we don't have to do them. I mean, and correct me if I'm wrong, didn't we have a couple of repeat findings that kind of led to stuff that, you know, were headlines in the paper for a while? So I guess the question is, are we tracking it, are we working on it?
So to answer that question, so since I've started here and Martha came in July, one of the first things we did was look at the financial audit. And it's very easy to see, if you just look back for a few years, the findings have been the same for multiple years, farther back than I even looked. And so that was one of the first questions we brought up, and some of the things that we found were that the financial audit report and those findings were not being brought forward to council and board every year. Every single year, the council and the board should have a presentation from the auditors to talk about the findings, to talk about the financial condition and what their ultimate recommendations were. So we did have that first financial report last year, and we will continue doing that going forward. We are a year ahead of what the audit is. So this current audit that will get done in January is for the year that ended July 1st of 2024. So some of that, a lot of the practices that were in place, we were just getting into our roles and being able to change some of the procedures and policies that were in place that were leading to those repeated findings. So this year in that area of the financial audit, you'll see 3 of the 6 that have been repeated findings already have implemented policies underway that will correct those findings. So next year's financial audit should at least have 3, if not more, removed completely, and the other 3 have plans in place right now and new policies looking directly at those findings to get those cleared up. They are definitely things that we can address and take the recommendations of the auditors and be able to get those repeated findings off of our financial report, which is what our goal is, obviously. So we're working hard towards that. It takes a lot of time to get all of the different things implemented. A lot of them are just basic policies that we need to go back and take a look at, revamp them, or if they didn't exist, get them in front of a council and the board to get them implemented. So that's what we're working on right now. We've made quite a bit of progress. There's definitely more to be done. Part of it is a recurring theme for those findings was a separation of duties, which is very challenging when you have a very small staff that works with all of the financials. Trying to keep everybody limited to only certain job duties that involve any of the financial transactions can be really tricky, and you often have to use all of your administrative staff and the financial staff to be able to successfully do that. So it's been a little bit of a puzzle trying to figure out where we can put which job duties to be able to successfully achieve that separation of duties. But we are working on that. We still continue to work on that, and we've made a lot of progress. There's, like I said, more to do, but we've identified the areas that we can improve and the policies we can put in place. So we're continuing to draft those policies and get them in front of the council and the utility board. Those are our major governing boards for their approval. So you'll see more of those coming up this next year, and we've had quite a few go through in the last 2 years.
Kind of on those same lines, Jeff, you and I want to talk a little bit about what you discovered with city code. I mean, just the fact that you've gone through the city code kind of from front to back, and there's just a lot of changes in that that also need to be addressed, right?
Yeah, there's inconsistencies, that something was adopted and something else maybe wasn't changed, or something was copied from maybe Davenport and Bettendorf because they had a good piece of code on something, and it refers to, let's say, a deputy city clerk who's the person in charge of this. Well, we don't have a deputy city clerk. So then we're tasked with, well, how do we interpret this, and who is the person that's in charge of this? But there's several of those things that we've come across. I think that's why you're seeing, I mean, my first year here, I think we had 24 ordinance amendments. In the prior 2 or 3 years, we had 10 or 12. It's because my philosophy has been, if you find something wrong, change it or bring it to somebody's attention. And when I bring it to these guys' attention and the rest of the council and mayor, their response has been, then take that to the planning and zoning, or take that to us and ask for an ordinance amendment on it. So we're trying to get some of that inconsistencies corrected, but I mean, there's a long way to go. And then the older your code is, and it's not unique to Eldridge. Every city is like this. But, you know, it's just going to take some work to go through it and get everything up to date and consistent and aligned with each other. But I hope, that's a goal of mine, and I'd really like to get that done, you know, before I retire, so we're starting off, you know, everything's up to date and good. So,
Well, that purchasing policy we just voted on last meeting, you know, that was another audit finding several times, and you mentioned private sector versus public sector. That's probably the biggest frustrating thing for me is the process of doing everything is completely different. What you would think in the private sector is, okay, let's just do it. It just doesn't work that way on the public side, but you know, Scott and myself, we talked about that particular purchasing policy, and I personally didn't agree with exactly the way it was when we voted on, but the way I looked at it is it was still a win. It was still a starting point. We all agreed, and we had to get it done, again, because of the audit findings. Does that mean we can't tweak it later? No, we can tweak it. We already talked about one item on it that we're probably gonna have to tweak sooner than later, just because it was realized after the fact. But that's one thing that I'm very OCD about, and that's I like timestamps, I like timeframes, I like finishing something that we started. And I have seen so many things since I've been on that get talked about, and then next thing you know, you haven't heard a word about it for months. And it's easy for us council, as an example, 5 of us, we're looking at that purchasing policy and we're trying to decipher each and every sentence in it and all mutually agree, and it could be cumbersome. And some people get stuck on certain things, but at the end of the day, we had to back up and take that 1,000-foot view and say, what's best for the city and how can we get something to start with and then build on it. So are we gonna do everything right the first time? No, but at least we're starting, we're trying, and we're getting that process going, and then with experience and the day-to-day operations, then we tweak stuff like that. So, but it is a definite goal. Anything that comes up on the audit finding has to be handled. Again, my goal is let's put timestamps on it. Let's figure out how long it's going to take to get those done so that we can check every one of them off the list. I'll repeat it again. I think a lot of it comes down to staffing. And again, private industry, I'd say let's just hire another person. We've had the conversation. It's just not that easy, but we have to prove why we need that position. And I personally, I think within 12 months, we will easily prove that there's another full-time position there, if not another full-time and a part-time, if I had my way. And that's how I operate. Again, I can't say that Scott's gonna have the same feelings or the other council members, but that's my opinion, is you hire for where you're going, not where you're at.
And I would agree with that, and it kind of goes back to a little bit to what Jeff talked about in the beginning when he talked about our low tax rate. You know, that's kind of been an albatross around our neck. You know, previous administrations and mayors, that was their big thing. They wanted Eldridge to have the absolute lowest tax rate in Scott County so that they could talk about that and sell that, which is really a good thing because it means lower residential taxes. But if we would have had just small incremental increases along the way, then we could afford some of this stuff. We really have a bare bones budget. I mean, so to go hire more people, there is not money for that. Out at Felmers Edition across from Northridge, those streets are in terrible shape. And that's part of Eldridge, and that should have been done 5-6 years ago. We have no money to fix streets. I mean, that's the situation that we're in. You know, we have grown so fast, and we're at 7,000 people, and now the people that are moving to our town, they want amenities. They want a splash pad. You know, they want all these things that for their kids or whatever the case may be. And we just don't have the funds to do that. I mean, it is really difficult just to get the emergency things done because we have no money because we have been so stuck on having the lowest tax rate. Would you agree with that, Ryan?
Yeah, 100%.
But also too, how much money have we spent on lawyers
Too much.
since I can't think of her name now, Lisa Cotter?
Too much.
And not just with the city administrator, but with other things also. Too much, I don't see any transparency there.
What's that?
I don't see any transparency there. How much was it that we spent on lawyers?
For which part?
All of it,
Oh, I don't know.
all the bad
I
stuff.
don't have the full
We do know the utility issue was 70 grand or something, wasn't it? That was the utility issue. just-
That's a lot of money.
It's a lot of money.
That's just since spring.
And that's just our portion, that doesn't count what the utility board spent on their portion.
But if we spent $60,000 on attorney's fees, double that for what we use with staff's time and efforts in that, at minimum.
And where do we get caught back up again with that? That's just totally lost, right?
Come on. I mean, that's for me, it's a lesson learned. It means that we've got to have better policies and things in place that prohibit stuff like that from happening.
How about raising taxes?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even small
Look,
increments.
look what's going on over there in Illinois. The governor takes that 1% tax off of the groceries,
Sure.
and then the cities turn right, and he just says to the cities, well, if the cities want to go ahead and tax, that'll be okay. Well, then some of them start putting the tax back on, and the other ones are saying they can't do it. And like little Milan out there, they got a Hy-Vee that's giving them $1 million a year. And East Moline can't get 300,000 out of it because they don't have any grocery stores.
And Scott pointed out too, you know, what those little incremental increases, those are easier to digest. But if you do nothing, if you're flat, next thing you know, you're trying to add this maximum tax hike. That's what upsets people because it's a shock. So again, I'm in favor of having small incremental raises in the taxes to get us to where we need until we can reduce them. But part of that, again, I think is important. We bring in that infrastructure. I don't know how many different developments people that have called looking to build in the industrial areas, we're not set up ready for it yet. So that's my goal is I want to make sure we're focusing on getting that done too. With that is probably going to be some tax increases. There's going to be infrastructure studies when they come back. There's going to be stuff with our water department, utility department that they're going to have recommendations on needing improved or replaced. So at the end of the day, nobody likes to talk about raising taxes, but ultimately we can't stay where we're at now and fix what the problems that we have.
Well, the electrical, look at, we got 2 circuits to feed the whole city. I mean, that's just scary. And then you get, that whoever designed that deal out there in front of Amazon, that should have been a 4-lane road instead of that zigzag. Because now, if you get developing where you're talking about developing, you need a 4-lane road from the interstate all the way to Leclerc Road.
Sure.
And then what do you need? You need an interchange on Interstate 80, which would be legal because there's a mile in between the two that are currently there. But there should have been an interchange put in there, right?
My understanding is I don't know that the DOT is going to allow them to have another interchange there. It's above my pay grade, but I think that's why they purposely developed the 4-lane coming down Hillendale from the east side of Amazon. I think that's where they want their heavy truck traffic. I could be wrong, but I think
Well,
that
their
was,
law was that you had to be a mile between interchanges.
is that what it is?
And I've checked them, and there's a mile between. But you're right, it could be the on and off ramps are the problem. They have to be longer because of the
Because
semis.
they had actually looked into it for UPS years back too. And I think it was turned down back then too. But I can't be certain.
But we almost need that 4 lanes just as an emergency exit from Eldridge. If something happens on 61,
Sure.
where it's blocked, you'd have a way around it. But like you say, there's so many things that you need to be looking at the same time. And the biggest thing is just raise some taxes and get some money coming in so you can get started, so you're ready for these things.
Sure.
Anybody else any questions?
Scott, does the city have a strategic plan? And I mean an honest to God, working, guiding document, not a secret binder with a bunch of flowery words that collected dust on a shelf. Something that you guys are following, that staff are following on a day-to-day basis.
We do have one that's probably collecting some dust, I'm guessing. You remember the year with the date on that?
19, I believe, was the last.
Okay, so 25 years old.
And the
Strategic
comprehensive
plans are
was
dead though every 3 years, right? If you don't refresh them every 3 years, it's moot. It's a dust collector, right? So is there any plans to refresh it?
I think it's been brought up, informally,
Because I think a lot of things that we're hearing about here are strategies.
Right.
And without something strategic to help guide you from a directional standpoint, you're gonna keep hearing these little bits of frustration.
Right.
And if you have a strategic plan, you can communicate back, here's the vision, here's where we're going.
Right. It would be good for us to take a look at that and revisit the one we have and see what needs to be updated. That would be good advice.
I know the comprehensive plan right now is in the process of looking at that.
So you guys are planning to do goal setting, starting in January or February, whenever we can get that first one. And that will be part of both comprehensive and strategic planning.
Anybody else have any questions or comments?
Scott? How are you?
Well, let's see, we've been down there, over here, we got the wrong time. The only comment I would make is that I am seeing some great things in the last 6-8 months around town that looks like it's stuff that we've been talking about doing for a long time, and I think we're on the right road. I feel real positive about that. If I was going to ask some questions, my question would simply be, I have a lot of people in the back seat of my car or the front seat of my car coming into town. We used to be known as the town that was gonna solve Bettendorf's problems because we were so neat and clean. I get comments, when I come in from the west, I get really good comments. When I come in from the south with somebody, I mean, there must be 10 trees that need to come down and not the best look for Eldridge. Have a little bit of that from the east when they come into town, and the same thing we have now kind of coming in from the north, where we're just really look busy and not like that town that we looked at for a few years ago. And one of the people that came in down there happens to be a tree trimming company. And I guess I just, when I heard those comments, thought, wonder if that guy would make some kind of deal with the city of Eldridge to go around and take care of a bunch of our dead trees. I mean, he's got to be paid, I'm not saying that, but maybe there'd be some kind of deal that we could do that would make us look a little sharper.
Talking the one on South First Street there.
Yeah, I mean, they've come in there and they've got a lot of equipment out there and they've been around a long time, not here, but just an observation that people have told me as they come in that we don't look as clean and sparkling as we used to do.
And are you talking generally First Street and LeClaire Roads from the north-south, or are you talking?
Coming in First Street, when you leave Pinehurst and you come, coming from your area out there, you come straight in and the left side looks really rough. A lot of timber, a lot of stuff down. And I'm not picking on anybody, I'm just saying that's the look that's Eldridge's front door. Same thing over here coming in on LeClaire Road, coming in there, we don't look the best. I know that's changing greatly in the next few years, but those were the comments that I heard, and I think Nancy and I have a house that I would not tell anybody that I ever lived there. It looks that bad. And, it's a neighborhood, and it shouldn't look that way, but it seems like there ought to be something we could do.
Right, nuisance issue.
All kinds of issues up there. And, it's just, it's upsetting when you look at that as our town, that's Eldridge. And just a thought, and maybe the city can look at it somehow and say, what can we do to kind of clean up a little bit? Those aren't the only properties, we've got others that look pretty rough. And then that just, we have different kinds of people looking at properties like that. When then we get somebody coming in and fixing it up, that's a good thing for Eldridge. Sure. If they come in and fix it up.
Thanks, Scott. Appreciate it.
I just want to meet you. Hi.
How are you doing today?
I'm doing fine.
Good.
Matt is taking great notes, and so we'll report all this back to the rest of the council so we can all address some of this stuff.
It's interesting that Jim reads all this in the North Scott Press. And he always says, well, I don't get that, and I don't get this, and I don't, he says, let's go find out what they're really saying. So
There you go.
we appreciate you guys doing that.
No problem. Judy?
I don't know if this is something the city would know or what. Is there ever gonna be a restaurant open in the old Lansing Grill? Are they opening?
So, last I was told, the intention is yes. The opening has been delayed. I've been told because of construction issues. Because the last I was told, November, middle of November, she didn't set an exact date, but I know that the last time I peeked through the windows, it looked like there was still a little bit of construction left to do. So the short answer is, yes, I'm told it's still opening. The long answer is, I have no idea when. Because we sure do
That's
need
the
it.
truthful answer.
We really need it. It's a new restaurant that's gonna be next door to Double Barrel, the old Lancers.
Have you had anybody else ask you if it's a dog kennel?
I have not.
I've been asked that up that 4 times, 5 times now. Dog on the front, you know, and they go by and they see that and they're, oh, it's gonna be a dog kennel.
Yeah. She might need a new sign then,
But I think that's her dog's name.
and I'm really excited for it because I've had a lot of her food and it's just, it's
Yes, it
incredible.
is.
So hopefully get it done before Christmas. Time's ticking.
From my understanding, if we go back to strategic planning for a second, what's the difference between a comprehensive plan and a strategic plan from a municipality standpoint?
The strategic plan is going to be shorter term goals typically, not necessarily short term, but looking more at 3 to 5, maybe out to 10. And those are going to be goals that are actionable goals that are set, projects that are identified to work towards, or priorities that are set between the council and the community input to work for specifically within a set period of time that can be reviewed and updated and crossing items off that list.
So strategy within the strategic plan might be to focus on some of the zoning things that Jeff was talking about, and an action step under that strategy might be to acquire those 4 parcels, right? And you would try to achieve that over the course of 3 to 5 years of the lifetime of the strategic plan, right?
Correct.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
You want to
So then the
identify the
comprehensive plan is longer range focused beyond that?
20 to 25 usually is what I've been told.
It usually looks at projected growth, what your vision is for the city. That would be where zoning and future zoning, things like that come in, where you want your different commercial and retail, industrial, residential, all of those things, where they're placed throughout the city. It's kind of that big vision to be able to start doing your strategic goals that fit within that larger plan for the community. And then sometimes those change when the growth, especially for someone like the city of Aldridge that grew so quickly, maybe wasn't anticipated at that rate of growth. It would bring you back to looking at that comprehensive plan maybe sooner than you would have before you get to that 20 or 25 year mark, to be able to adjust and look at what that plan was 20 years ago when it was created, and shifting it to meet the needs of the growth and maybe what that changed vision might look like to go with it.
So that makes sense. So how often then is a comprehensive plan reviewed? Is it, from my perspective, a strategic plan is a day-to-day guiding map, right? Until you're ready to reboot it. A comprehensive plan, then, how often does that get revisited then?
In my world, every meeting, with planning and zoning and board of adjustment,
Okay, makes sense.
you know, and that's the first question that they ask is, when someone applies for a rezoning, is this in line with the comprehensive plan? And it doesn't necessarily mean that it can't be, you know, it's gonna be denied, but it means that there's an extra step there then, because planning and zoning would recommend a change to the future use map, and then recommend the zoning that it might be going then, and then council would have to do the same thing.
And the short answer for me, being on the council, is not enough. So I was first introduced to our comprehensive plan specifically by a developer several months back that reached out and wanted my input on his development that he was proposing for Eldridge, and was basically schooling me on what was in our comprehensive plan, and gave me some copies of it, to which I then took, and I'm always learning. I mean, I never will claim to know it all, but I mean, I really got stumped because we hadn't had that conversation, and we had our hands full, but that's still no excuse. So I dove in there a little bit more, wanting to know why this developer was basically wanting my feedback on something that we had in our comprehensive plan that I just didn't know anything about. So, you know, shame on me for not doing my homework. I figured it out then and figured out where that comprehensive plan was, but it's something that, as a council member, I would like to see us going through it very much more frequently. A, so that we understand it. B, if we see the direction shifting, I would assume we could amend that comprehensive plan.
Yeah.
And that would be the time to do it, rather than when it's too late. When something else comes to town and you're stuck with it because it's already in your comprehensive
Yeah,
plan.
that's my concern, is if your comprehensive plan has bumpers on it, guardrails on it, and if you're not staying within your bumpers or guardrails, are you creeping in on what the original mission of the comprehensive plan is, and all of a sudden, you're 25 years looking back on, oh, hell, this is not what we expected to do at all, this is not what we planned. Okay, I appreciate that, thank you.
And as far as, sorry.
I think that you've got a heck of a job. I think when I hear all about so-and-so's coming in and they need lift stations here and there, I don't know how you plan for that. I really don't. And that's not your fault. It's just that right now we're facing massive growth of people coming in buying huge tracts of land. 7, 8 years ago, when we were on the plan and zone, we didn't anticipate selling these huge buildings like we're seeing, especially on the south slope. So that's got to be tough.
We're stuck.
Yeah, yes, you are, and it's not your fault. You addressed an issue here the other day that we've had a major traffic problem in this city for 30 years, and we're just compounding it, and we've got to find some solutions to those. And I thought I had one 3 years ago, but didn't work, I guess.
I'm sure with Ryan, he's on it.
Huh?
Share your idea with Ryan, he's on it.
Well, I thought the fastest growing school district in the state of Iowa was Tiffin. What did Tiffin do with their junior high? They moved it out on the interstate like I suggested, that said North Scott schools all over it. And we split up that traffic pattern of the elementary kids with K1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So you've got the same number of cars, you've eliminated all the junior high.
Sure.
And I mean, those kind of things we need to start thinking.
I would say that your ideas are not being heard on deaf ears. I've heard a little bit of conversation of some of the growth that the school district is anticipating, and I would say that some of your ideas may not be terribly far off.
Where junior high is going to be real, and we got the land there for it, but we don't have the traffic pattern for it.
On a good note, we did meet with the city engineer last Wednesday. And we had some pretty good discussion about the Fifth Street issues, and I think there's a good handful of positive, both short-term and long-term ideas. The fortunate thing is, I think they realized that the study was done in 2012. There was already a study on the streets done, but again, I'm that guy that says, well, let's just quit talking about it, let's do something about it. So that's why we're, I want to be aggressive on finding the solution that will work, both short-term and long-term, but it's easy for people to get pulled different directions, especially, we're volunteers, okay? And it does take some work, but we still made that commitment. And when life gets busy and other things come into play, because there's emergencies, so to speak, but there's always something that's going to happen. That's going to pull us different directions. You still got to have something wrote down and a guideline to follow to finish something or see it to the end. And it's not always easy, but I think with Scott's help, myself and the rest of the council, I think we're gonna make progress. I really do feel good about it, and I was unsure what to expect, you know? But here we are, and again, you have to go get dirty before you're gonna be able to fix things. And, you know, I appreciate that, I wanna hear the stuff that frustrates people, but I also wanna hear the guidance on some of the things that you do see changing direction and that's going somewhere positive, because that's what then, that gives us an idea of what we need to focus more on. Not that we always wanna do, all the fun stuff, but we need to know how we're doing so we can improve on it. Does that make sense?
I've spent maybe 3 years listening to the plumber next to me here talk about sidewalks in Eldridge. And as you age, you're pretty quiet because you,
I'm just trying to be nice.
but Jim's got some real concerns about sidewalks. Dick Cole does as well, that they try and walk around town and they're up and down and you can't do that.
And they're not there at all. How many miles of curb does not have sidewalk in this city? And how come we keep building more miles and miles of curb and no sidewalk?
I agree.
And I don't know who proves that. I know I don't. But I get the right to check to be able to live here.
It's an interesting question. How many miles don't have sidewalk in Eldridge?
And how much new down, you go down First Street, there's no sidewalk. You can't go from the high school south.
Have to get the news.
There's no sidewalk there. Well, when are we gonna quit building that kind of stuff? We're just making more down past where I live.
If you went out in front of your subdivision across the street, is there anything that we've put in like Foster's developed the next Townsend Farms? And I guess a lot of us thought there would be sidewalk there. Is there any point that the council's gonna say, from here on out, it's gotta have a sidewalk if it's developed? I mean, is that something that we can't do?
We've had some pretty good conversation on sidewalks, primarily on the industrial side of it. Jeff, what's your take on the residential side of it, where we've not got sidewalks?
City code is, I've been here 2 years, for much longer than 2 years, city code has said that you have to have a sidewalk in a residential area. Why that wasn't approved prior to me being here, I don't know.
So was the last edition of Townsend Farms before you got started? And Moose was before you got started?
Yep.
And then I asked, what kind of plan have you got to start putting in sidewalks through the market?
That's cool. He's wondering where in the world we're at.
And, yes,
And I mean, if you got 50 miles of sidewalk that don't exist, how many miles are we gonna do this year?
Well, and then,
How many feet are we gonna do? We don't even have a plan for 1 foot of existing non-sidewalk.
they did a bunch of sidewalk work repairs this year. Nothing new that was added.
It's repairs.
Yeah,
There's a long-range plan
Yeah.
to have this city up to speed according to the rest of the city.
Is that on the CIP?
We don't have sidewalks on there. A big challenge for that is determining how those are gonna get funded, because those are in most cases, depending on what property it's on, are gonna be the responsibility of the property owners that are abutting up to where that sidewalk's gonna be. And so to put those in now, where they were approved to not be put in before, and trying to assess the property owners that would be responsible for paying for that would be a challenge to overcome, but it would also be a challenge to try to justify public money being spent on installing those sidewalks when we didn't pay to have them and the developers paid for them in the areas where there weren't waivers granted. So it gets to be pretty tricky, kind of going between old practices and then trying to enforce code that existed at that time that still exists, but trying to switch gears on that can come with a little bit of an obstacle that takes some time to figure out a way to make that work. So we haven't quite mastered that one yet.
Let me
We're
ask
working on
you,
it.
Scott, if, to your recollection, so let's use South First Street for an example by New Circle. What was your understanding? Was that in code back then? My understanding was that it was supposed to get sidewalks and they never got put in. And then at some point, they went back, possibly had a conversation with the residents that it would be their cost. Do you remember anything about that?
What I remember about it, and this is two-sided, but that there was an option there, and the developer, chose the more expensive option, which was the berms and the privacy and all the, whatever those weeds were that are supposed to grow and flower. And that was more expensive than the sidewalk. Now, I wasn't in on all of those meetings, but
if that was to be allowed, which I'm not saying it couldn't be, but you would still have to tie Pinehurst to New Circle.
there's no way for those, I mean,
Because
those kids are still walking out in the middle of the road.
Well, just like they do down Lincoln,
And-
Yeah.
which is horrible, and now we're 5 years.
And someday they're
without
gonna get
anything
somebody,
done. I agree
her
with
baby,
you on that.
she's
Yeah,
gonna be
I
going
live
down.
on.
And that's gonna be the lawsuit.
That's what happens.
Terrible. Yeah.
And everybody
Wait
says,
till
oh, we
somebody
should have done
starts-
something.
I actually-
20 years ago.
Don't take Lincoln anymore.
Right.
Because of that.
So
I
I've
go
been
all
to
the way
a
around.
couple of city council meetings now in reference to the Lancer Run subdivision that's being proposed right by, in front of Ed White. And to kind of piggyback off of what Scott is saying, we have traffic issues in our community. And right now, it looks like the city council is leaning towards approving this subdivision, which will have 3 fourplexes and I believe 4 student-built homes in that little area by the church right across from Ed White. And the homeowners in the area are upset because even though we've had a petition with over 60 people signing it, it seems like we're not being listened to by the city council. The sidewalk issues right there, right across from Ed White are horrible. The street is horrible. And yet the city council looks towards approving this congested area being kind of more congested with more homes and more development. And while you guys say you want to listen to the homeowners, I don't understand. We haven't had anybody come forward at any of these meetings talking in favor of development other than the superintendent and the developer. So what is the reasoning for putting, and then the aesthetics of this particular situation too is not conducive to be right by our schools, the football field, people are going to see this area when we've got these congested fourplexes all crammed in there. How does this help our community with traffic, and how does it help our community with aesthetics, and how does it help our community with safety for our students? And the lack of sidewalks.
And we've talked about this, and I said the last meeting, I really do appreciate your guys' passion for this. I mean, all you guys coming to the meeting and doing the petition, and I totally get that. I mean, I really do. I think that what we found is, goes back to the comprehensive plan. I mean, that was zoned, or not zoned, but that was in 2011, designed for high-density residential. And so we wanted to change it to the R3. And you've already got 2 R3 lots right adjacent to that too, so that's a tough thing. My concern is the traffic congestion. I totally agree with you on the congestion. And Jeff and I went out and looked at it one day, and there is a problem there. And Ryan, to his credit, has taken it upon himself to make sure that happens. But what I go back to, Don, is like I said at the meeting, you know, growth is difficult sometimes. And I think about when I bought my house up on Sheridan Drive, I said this at the meeting, you know, it was a dead-end street, and I loved it. My kids could play in the street, I had a cornfield there, I saw the sunset. It was the best thing in the world. And then development came, and we lost all that stuff. We lost our view. And then I go to where I live now, on Townhall Drive, and I think about all the people that live on South 8th Street on the west side. And in their backyard was this beautiful pasture with Elm Green's cattle and everything, and they loved that, which was great. And then comes the people that decided to develop where I live now. And my wife and I were just walking past there yesterday, looking at that from 8th Street, and man, that's not a very good view. You see the back of our house there and all these other houses, and it's not the same view as the pasture. And I get that, and that's really difficult. I mean, and I feel for all the people that live around Valley Drive. I mean, you had that great vacant park, for lack of a better word there, for your kids to play in and stuff for 30-something years. And now, when the school district has played by the playbook that we put in place, like I said at the meeting, you know, we gave them the rules, they follow the rules. And I will say to their credit, the last meeting, they said that they would maybe readjust their plan a little bit. They would take a look at that, and maybe it will only be 2 of the 4 places. Maybe it'll be 6 of the homes instead. I don't know, Dan,
And I guess the thing is, the school district bought the land when it was zoned R1, R2. And I don't think any resident in that whole area would be opposed to an R1, R2 development. It's the rezoning to the R3 that allows for these larger fourplexes and multiple fourplexes. That's the problem.
Oh, I get that, you know, I do understand that.
And the logistics of it and just the traffic and all that. And what's the rush? Why is there this big push and hurry to do that? Because there's plenty of lots that the school district can purchase right now for students.
That's incorrect.
There are no lots in Elton.
There's no lots they can make it work with the student-built house.
In Long Grove
They
or Princeton?
they gotta get the price down to build with young people building, where that lot's between $40,000 and $50,000. They had it set up on 5th Street, going down 5th Street, and they got that turned down. That would have worked as well. But they've got like 100 kids working in this project, and they're going out and having a job after high school. And that's one of the things they're trying to do. I am not negating that, but there aren't, the last lot, I just sold one, $82,000. That does not work for a student-built house.
And what's the development going to be out in Donahue? They're putting a big subdivision out there now. Are those lots going to be in those price?
I'm not defending the school district, but I do know they had 3 accidents going out to the one they had before. They aren't going to go back to Princeton or Donahue and have this 25 kids driving to and from. And that's just the reality of what it is and why they're trying to find some lots.
And so this particular development will give them 4 student-built homes.
That's correct. But that's my understanding. I haven't seen the whole.
Which is, in 4 years, there will be no student homes in that development. They will have all these fourplexes currently in there. And it's sad. It's sad for the traffic.
I guess I'm not aware of fourplexes.
Yes.
I'm aware of 4-unit buildings, but they're condos owned, not rented. Is that correct?
They're proposing 3 fourplex buildings, 2-story villas, they're calling them. That was, and all these houses they're projecting to sell between $300,000 and $350,000.
They're condos.
Yeah, they're condos, not.
Individual.
And they're 2-story, and
there's nothing in the
because there's
paperwork.
a overlay to this zoning, these buildings will be 10 foot from people's property lines, from existing property lines.
There's nothing in the paperwork on those condos that says they cannot be rented.
Anything in Eldridge can be rented by state law.
All I'm saying is, there's nothing in the paperwork that says you cannot rent those. I could go there and build all of them, couldn't rent them all out tomorrow. Yeah. And if you want to correct the problem, first you gotta decide you want to correct it.
The developer had stated that they would be adding that to the homeowners association covenants, that they couldn't be rented. And that's up to them if they do that or not.
I don't
The city
think they
doesn't
can
dictate
legally
that.
do that. I might be
Yeah,
wrong.
I don't know.
There's
The other ones do.
multiple of them around here that do it.
Yeah. Oh, that they can't be rented?
Absolutely.
I thought you just said a minute ago that
Sure.
anything can be rented.
For single-family houses or dwellings, yeah, but not if it's not a homeowners association, correct?
And,
So yes.
and the city does not enforce homeowners association covenants, the homeowners association does. The city, that's not our job to enforce covenants.
Jeff, I have a question for you. If the developer, which I'm not familiar with the dude that's doing this over here with the school, they know all the rules that have to be laid out for that ordinance to get passed. But I have not seen an ounce of energy from the city of Eldridge to help the residents to say, okay, this is what you have to do to make sure that this ordinance does not pass. Why isn't there help from the city for these guys back here that are fighting it?
And I haven't had anyone come into my office and ask me that question.
Can I ask it now, even though I'm not a resident over there?
Yes.
But how much time do you have, right?
Right.
I mean, is there a certain percentage, do you have to have 100% of the homes around there
No,
signed up?
the property owner has just as much, the owner of that development has just as much property rights as the people living around it. So if the city of Eldridge in 2011 put on a comprehensive plan that that future use for that parcel was going to be R3 multifamily residential, and that has never been changed up until now, after someone has already been purchased the property and is trying to change it to that. I mean, that's just wrong to do that. If someone had a problem with that in the last 14 years, then that should have been addressed. So someone was saying that the school district just bought it and now wants to change it. The school district knew that the comprehensive plan said it was R3, you know, and the developer knew that. So they bought that with the intention of doing this. So now after the fact, the city can't go back and say you can't do that now that you've already purchased it, even though in 2011 we said that you could. That's my opinion on it as the zoning officer.
As you have talked about, so because you made the city make some changes, they wanted, what, a 24-foot street, and you made them do 30, is that correct?
Yeah, so the city staff reviews plans prior to it getting to the board, or the planning and zoning commission in this case. And so sometimes developers will, you know, when they originally submitted that, they had asked for a 24-foot street with a 40-foot right-of-way and sidewalks along one side. And so we had a lot of back and forth for probably 2 weeks. We went back and forth maybe 2 or 3 times with the developer before it made its way to the Planning and Zoning Commission. So if it doesn't meet, I'm bound by city code. I mean, the city code actually says that I have to do what city code says. You know, and if I don't, I can be held legally accountable for that. So it's my job to review that with the other city staff members and say if it meets city code or doesn't meet city code. If a developer comes in and lays something on my table and says, I got this blank piece of property, what should I do with it? I have to say, whatever city code says you can do with it. You know, I can't tell Scott, well, you should do this with that property. That's not my role. And Scott, if he took my advice and did that and it didn't work out for him, he could sue me and say, well, Jeff Martins told me to do this with that piece of property. And that's not my role. My role is to say whether it meets city code or doesn't meet city code. In this case, it met city code, so I said, you know, it's my job, I'm legally required to say that meets city code and we recommend approval because it meets city code. You know, after that point, you know, if someone wants to deny it, then, you know, I don't know, it's up to them, I guess, to find a reason why it should be denied at that point.
Overlay part of this, part of the city code then?
Yes.
So this particular parcel plan, once rezoned to R3, would automatically then be rezoned to have the overlay?
No, they submitted an application to have the planned residential overlay on it. And that, and city code, and it's part of the zoning code, and it's in with all the R1, the R2, the R3, the C3, the whatever, it's all in there as part of the zoning code, and it's in itself a zoning district, you would call it.
So that then allows them to no longer adhere to the traditional setbacks?
Correct, and that whole section of city code I can print out and give you or email to you, and you can read it for yourself. but it's pretty specific on what they can and can't do. There's certain things they can do and certain things they can't do. In this case, what they've done meets all that city code. And as I said, I didn't write the city code. These two guys didn't write this city code. The mayor didn't write that city code, and the other three council members did not write that city code. It's been part of city code for I don't know how long, a long time. And you know, this developer, you know, found that and is using it. He's using it to his advantage, yes, but he's not violating any rules or laws. That's what city code says he can do.
Back when Tom Berg's was on the corner and the railroad station was across the street, what was the city code? My question is, and my comment on that is, don't use the excuse that it's the city code. Since when have you not decided to maybe change the city code to update it to make it a better code?
Sure. Yeah.
Is there nothing wrong with doing that?
Absolutely.
But first somebody's gotta want to upgrade the city code, so those kind of things that you're talking about can't happen. Can't happen till somebody in charge decide, let's figure out how to make it happen.
Yeah. But as far as the planned residential overlay district goes, there's certain pieces of property that wouldn't be able to be developed without it. This might be one of those properties. This is a good use of the planned residential overlay, in my opinion. Somebody's saying that they don't want a two-story house behind their two-story house is not a good reason to me to not allow something. You know?
I think the biggest concern are the ends of those two fourplexes that are literally 10 feet from the property lines.
And I agree.
And I don't know if there's a way, we're meeting with Joe next Wednesday, if there's a way they can do three plexes to give a little bit more of a buffer. The street, the T street also ends 10 feet from a person's property line.
Sure.
Which just seems very unfair.
I'm assuming you're talking about Joe Study, you're meeting with?
I hope that goes well down there.
Joe?
He said at the meeting that, you know, they would be willing to look at their plan and maybe realize it, and I'm kind of holding him to that. I hope he said listen to you, and I hope he does that. And I hope they can come up with an alternative plan.
Colin's already working on a plan to try and do that. The thing that's difficult is the fact that each one of those units justifies them getting a lower price for the lot that the students are going to be building. So they've got to have a certain amount of income to make that work. I'm not involved in that at all, but I've got a buyer that just bought a lot down here and he's building. And so I heard that and I looked at what that was, and my real problem with the whole development was the traffic pattern and how they're going to ingress and egress up there. They're actually going to improve the drainage of that area substantially, because we've always had a problem on the bottom of the street over there. And, you know, that's just been a constant. I think Joe will do anything that he can to make that work within the parameters of what he can do to make the student-built project. I wish we would have allowed them to build on 5th Street, because that would have been immediate. You had the lots, the school already owned the lots, and that would have been but it didn't work out that way,
So you kind of heard different people's input on this. And again, I said at the meeting before we voted, I wouldn't want this in my backyard. But you mentioned attorney's bills, and we're spending money foolishly. I look at my job in this particular case is they take the recommendation of what is allowed by city code. Zoning and planning passed it. The comprehensive plan has it in there. My job is not to put my personal opinion of what I want in my backyard. My job is to stop spending $70,000 on attorneys. And so I'm making the best educated decision I have with the information that's been given to me. We've got 2 more votes. If something gets presented and it's something that we have not seen yet, I'll look at it. But as of right now, I feel like it's out of my wheelhouse to tell the school district or Joe how I want them to develop their property. They own the land. Now, I did take it upon myself to use it to my advantage to give him a couple of my personal ideas. I wasn't councilman, you'll see, then I was personal, telling him my ideas, he sounded receptive to it. But at the end of the day, I've got to know my place. And my place as a member of the city council has duties and responsibilities, and they go beyond what I personally would want. Does that make sense? It's a tough decision, and we talked about it. I wouldn't want that there, but I'm trying, in my opinion, to do what's best for Belridge. And going to the traffic area, I'm not letting go on that until we have a plan in place. And it's in the CIP budget or comprehensive plan or wherever it's got to go, because I understand the problem. But in my opinion, and I do a lot of construction and roadways and developments, I don't see that causing that much more of a problem than what we already have got, that we've been kicking the can down the road for over 10 years now. So the bottom line is, we just need to quit kicking the can down the road and let's come up with a solution.
And then back, Jack.
We just had an ambulance come down there today on Valley Drive. And cars were parked on both sides. And they could barely make it through. And if someone else was coming, it would have been, had to back up. And this was during school traffic.
Yeah, and I walked it again today, because when we talked to the city engineer and the school district, we had talked sidewalks and sidewalk conditions, and I walked it again just to know exactly what the conditions of the sidewalk was, and I think even more so today, I see more opportunities of how we can fix this problem long term. And again, I can't help but to believe with the communication with the superintendent that they're going to be on board with working with us.
I know my position too. And my wife Nancy, 56 years being married, she's a wonderful lady, but she's having real difficulty walking. She said, make sure you thank her for getting the water spigots down at the end of the streets. They've been all through our area, lowered those, so, I mean, people were tripping over them all the time. And I just can't believe that somebody didn't sue somebody at that time, but she just thinks that's the greatest thing since sliced bread. So for what you're doing, thank you. I'll be okay when I get home.
Jeff, I've got a question for you. Such as the church lot over there on South Fifth, was a site plan review committee used at all?
Yeah.
So all 5 of those committee people, which were the community development director, the city engineer, the street superintendent, the building inspector, and the planning commissioner, all wrote off on that slot.
Yeah,
And how did that pass with the street superintendent, knowing that you had traffic trouble there already?
And again, it's traffic trouble for 10 minutes before and after school. And, well, and
I mean, I live right in the middle of that.
and I'll come over and sit, and that's fine, you can come with me.
You can come sit in my office.
No, you can come and sit with me in the church parking lot, because that's the area we're talking about, not your driveway.
Well, the church parking lot is not the same as coming up Valley Drive or Prairie Vista.
Agreed, and this subdivision is gonna have nothing to do with the traffic on Valley Drive.
It is, they're all going to the school.
The people on this subdivision are all going to the school.
Right. The people coming up Valley Drive in the morning between 7:30 and 8 o'clock, 99% are going to school.
And that's fine, but why are you saying that this subdivision is gonna?
There's more cars now.
Because there's more cars in the subdivision, and then the cars coming through the school to drop the kids off, then they have to come out and go the other way, if they got junior high kids, and go through the same traffic to get to there again.
Okay, and we're gonna have to agree to disagree, because I sat in the church parking lot on numerous occasions, and I timed it, and at any time I could have turned left or right, and it was 10 minutes before and after school.
On Valley Drive?
In the church parking lot of the subdivision that we're talking about.
Well, I'm talking about the street, Valley Drive.
And I agree, that's the
I come out there
problem.
the other day, it's been 5 minutes before I could, I'm only 2 houses up. Let's say at 5 minutes, before I made a U-turn and went back out.
And I understand, and I'm not saying you don't have a problem, I'm saying your problem isn't caused by this subdivision. And I think there is a problem there, and that problem needs to be addressed, and I think Councilman Yossi said numerous times that he's committed to addressing that traffic issue. But I disagree that this subdivision is gonna cause additional problems in front of your house.
Let's take, because we're kind of needing to wrap up here, let's get one more question, maybe we can try to wind it out, so.
Can somebody redefine high density then for these folks? And is there a number, high density, medium and low, that we'd all understand?
No.
Just by high density, what's high density?
And, yeah, and there's.
You know what I'm saying, Jeff?
Yeah, I do, and there's
Throwing
that.
everything into a bucket.
And part of the problem here that I'd like to see corrected when the comprehensive plan is updated is the comprehensive plan future use map doesn't use the same designations as our zoning districts. So they just say high-density residential, and then our zoning map calls that R3 multifamily or R2 two-family. So it's difficult to, you know, they're not exact apple-to-apple, orange-to-orange comparisons, you know, because the same wording is not used. But I will say that if, as an R3 district, if this was rezoned, R3 allows, you know, multi-unit apartment buildings that would be much more, that would increase the density much more than what this proposed development is asking it to be increased by. So this is, what they're proposing is well under regular density for an R3 development. You know, so there's actually a decrease in density if this were to be rezoned to R3. There's not an increase in, so the planned residential overlay isn't giving them an increase in density, and they're not asking for it. Because the R3 district itself allows much more density than what they're asking for.
Is there anybody that has a question or a comment about anything that we haven't talked about tonight? You want to say something? Yeah.
Before you close, I want to thank Nevada for what she's gone through for the past 2 years.
Absolutely.
And then we'll thank the two aldermen, but she's the one that's really fun, you know.
We have said that over and over again. We are so thankful that she is on our staff and Jeff as well. The things they've had to deal with that the public has no idea. It's pretty incredible. And they're picking up a lot of the mess that was left them and doing a really good job at it.
Well, it just looked like it was ongoing there. One after another, get down to one, and here's another one.
What's your guys' thoughts on something like this tonight? It was our first time doing it. Would you do it the same? Would you rather have it around tables more? I mean, what would you change about it? What do you like? What didn't you like? What can we do to make this more of an ongoing thing? I don't know if that's quarterly, other council members doing it, but we want some feedback on this.
It's a good thing. It's a good chance to hear some and ask questions, and so we appreciate it. You guys already committed a lot of time, so thanks for going the extra step.
We need to grow up as a city, and we are. I think we've got two councilmen that care, and not that the others didn't. I don't mean that, but we've got to grow up and you know, you look at these plans, you know, we had what I want to say, the Bettendorf mayor in. I mean, he's got it down for 5 years out exactly what's going to happen. We haven't been that way. And we have got to grow up in our leadership. We've got to grow up in what we're doing. I think this is a great step. I really do. And
I want to thank you folks for doing it.
Thank you. And this is the first time I've ever gone to a council meeting that I didn't think I got dirty looks from people that I was coming in. Seriously. And you and I were sitting in chairs the same way and like, oh, can I even open my mouth? This doesn't feel that way.
Well, we want it to be very comfortable for people.
And open.
And open, and so myself, my phone number's on the city's website, and my email address is on there. Call me. I may not answer right away, but I'll return your call. We've got an open door policy, and there's, again, I want to hear about the good stuff and the bad stuff. So as we grow and hopefully get better and do better as a group, hopefully we can start making some improvements that the community is going to enjoy, and we can just keep building on that. But without good communication, that's never possible. And I'm confident that I believe for the most part our council communicates very well. We can always communicate better. We always have room for improvement. But it's been a good year, and I'm looking forward to the next year and hoping we can keep growing.
Make sure that the people with the sidewalks understand they have to shovel them.
Yeah. This is very true. One more thing too, before we wrap up, if you didn't sign the clipboard, if you wouldn't mind signing on your way out, we greatly appreciate it. We kind of keep track of who's here. And Scott, you got anything else to add?
No, thank you all for coming. We really appreciate the dialogue and the conversation, and I think it's been good from our angle, and it's been good for you guys too.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming. Appreciate it.
Sorry, we started at 7.